All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I do want to say real quickly that Colleen has a Karuna class coming up. Is it this weekend? It's this weekend. Yeah.
Yep,
So
starts
Friday, which is February 23rd. I don't know what day it is. February 23rd through the 25th. That is Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki Master. And she still has a few spots left. If you're watching this later on YouTube, go ahead and email her to do any registration process that you might need to do. But if you are thinking about taking it, it's amazing. And also, it's really perfect timing. Oh, I thought I saw you were going to say something, Colleen.
Oh, go ahead. I'm just agreeing with you. That was such a powerful journey. Still.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we were talking about with this idea of invisibility is also really sometimes a part of that is feeling unheard. And there's a lot of layers to what that means and a lot of words that are within that concept. And so we can put in the words even, and these are also different experiences, but in the same kind of vein of things: invalidated, disempowered, othered. So there's some of those kinds of words that are also within that can also contribute to this idea of feeling invisible, and over time also bring us into the experience of being unheard by even ourselves and being invisible to ourselves. Because if that can happen over time, I definitely know that there's a process where, maybe we just are like resigned to it, right? Of, okay, well, if I continue to just not be heard, I'm just going to kind of resign to that. And there can be a deep process around that. And there's different layers, there can be layers that aren't quite so deep. We all have our individual experiences with these concepts. And then there's, really those really big layers of these concepts where it's been a lifelong, a really lifelong experience, and maybe even into past lives or ancestral history. The traumas from this lifetime, past lifetimes, all of those are also encompassing with it. And so, one of the things that I've seen in sessions with that concept is allowing Reiki to help those words be said, because they can be old things, they can be things from childhood, adulthood, all of those time frames within our lives. And it is going into the spaces with Reiki that helps to lift those things. It's like I have experienced and seen, today was a little bit of a lighter version, but in sessions and things like that, where, you almost kind of need to yell them into the light of Reiki. Other times it can be like today, where it's a little more gentle, where Reiki can come in and just lift them from you and for you. And maybe there's the time frames in your life where you might know what those words are that need to be said that weren't able to be said at the time. Other times you may not remember. You just have the remembering of feeling unheard, or the remembering of feeling invalidated in your experience. And what I've seen from Reiki is how much it can help in that process of, we've talked about the light of forgiveness a lot in this circle, and how forgiveness doesn't make anything okay that anybody did, the actions of somebody else did. It doesn't make it okay, but what it does do is it releases any power that that has over you. Forgiveness is for you. It's not for somebody else. And this process with what Reiki can do to help this process also of being heard, it's kind of in that same idea. It's not for anybody else. It's for us. It's for ourselves. So that feeling of being unheard, that maybe has even contributed to your invisibility, is it's for you, and the Reiki can just come in and lift it for you and from you. And it can do it gently. Other times it's more challenging. Kind of depends on the situation and where you're at and what you're experiencing, and it can release that feeling from you. And I did hear in the journey today that the light of forgiveness did come in also with it, because that feeling of being unheard is, usually because you're not being heard by somebody else. And so there can be also that process of forgiveness within that. But just that Reiki light coming in and actually hearing your words, because that's the other thing. And maybe you don't remember exactly what they were, but there's still that remembering of that. Sometimes you might remember what they are, and you can say them into the light of Reiki, and it does hear you, and it does help you in that process of that, of that being heard, of then finding your own visibility within your own words as well. Because I know when you kind of give up trying to be heard, it can also create that level of visibility. Or maybe there was a level of safety in being heard that is a part of all of this for you. And you can safely say your words into Reiki, and it can help you. And because of that, that created that layer of invisibility. And so it can also help you to say those words that needed to be said in that light of pure love, of any sort of non-judgment. Even though we might have anger around it, Reiki is outside of anger around it. And so it can really be that beautiful, loving support system for you in that process. And one of the things that happens with not being heard is that, or can happen with not being heard, is that it can then also boil it over and go into the opposite kind of end of that spectrum, where you're fighting so much about being heard because you feel so unheard. You're fighting so much for those words to be able to be spoken, or for somebody to hear you, that we almost can go into this place of overcompensation, or maybe even being I don't want to use the word overly sensitive, but maybe feeling that need to fight to be heard to a really great degree. And there's also a piece of that for ourselves to look at, because sometimes that is kind of a different level of invisibility, because it is in this place of maybe what's inauthentic to ourselves. Reiki can also help us navigate these situations, because maybe there is a change in situation that we need to make. Maybe there is a boundary that we need to create from people that continually not hear us. And it can help us to navigate that. It can help us within our clarity around that. It can help us to find that path in a way that is, kind of for our highest good, and how that all needs to transpire for us. And I know a lot of us have experienced that through our journey with Reiki, when we start off and where we might be at in our life. And as Reiki guides us to a path of wellness, mind, body, and spirit, that some of those processes take place as well. And then it can also navigate in the spaces where you can say all the words that you want to say, and it doesn't necessarily change anything. right? Many of us have experienced that over the last few years. So it doesn't necessarily change anything. I'm in a situation where my words are not going to change anything. And so how do I navigate that piece? And how does Reiki help me to navigate that within myself? So the person that I would hope to be able to say things with, it's literally not going to change the situation. So there's no point, right? And so how does Reiki help me navigate that experience within myself? And and looking at where I need to maybe let go of some things, figure out how to navigate that path. And so there's all of these things about being unheard that can contribute to our lack of visibility to ourselves, to others, and how that path looks for each of us is going to be different. But my experience with this work, whether it's Reiki or other modalities, I thought it was really interesting, makes sense that the sound healing came in today, that those frequencies of sound came in today to help support this work with us, because of course that's that sound that would go along with our words and being heard. And so there's a lot of different things that can help us on this path. But I do know from my own process, from sessions that I've done with people, watching or hearing people's journey is a better way to say that, how much that Reiki can help in this, because it really does hear you. The enlightened ones do hear you. The energy itself hears you. And even if that feels like a little like, what I do know is that it is lifting those feelings of being unheard from you and for you. And even if that needs to be reflected in your outside life a little bit differently, it does also help you on that path. We also find ourselves in communities that are kind of these beautiful circles of people where we can be heard, and we are heard a lot. And in sessions with others where our practitioners or our teachers also help to hear. But Reiki is behind so much of that process. And so many of us that have had that experience where maybe we've had a session where we were able to kind of speak the words that we have been left unspoken for us, or maybe in a class after an experience or a meditation or an attunement where we have those kind of that emotional progress that happens for us. And there are people in that circle to help hear us, right? To listen to our words so that we can be heard. It can make a really big difference in our life, because sometimes in the outside world, we might not be surrounded with people that hear us completely. And that just being in in communities, being in circles or sessions or classes with people who are also a part of that process really can be life-changing for many of us. And so, just these sacred spaces, and Reiki energy is also a part of that. Or when we're in other modalities and sitting in those circles, or in ceremonies, so much of that is such a part of that piece of it, that it then will kind of, it's hard to not have it spill into the rest of the parts of your life, and going through that healing, because for many of us, it's a lifelong thing where we've felt unheard, which has created our invisibility to maybe the outside world, but mostly where it starts is first and foremost with ourselves and us. Again, as we talked about last week, us hearing us. And I'll tell you, as somebody that has definitely overcompensated for that needing to be heard, that is another piece of this process, is like, okay, where is my actual authentic need of being heard? What are my authentic words that need to be heard? What spaces authentically do I need to be heard? Because that is another piece of this visibility process for a lot of us. Well, Colleen, I don't know if you have anything to add.
It's, the topic of invisibility is one that, now I'm like, we need to write more about it. We need to talk more about it. It's such a big topic. And it actually came in last week in the distance Reiki share as, we were talking about navigating through social expectations and the big picture of authenticity, and invisibility came in so big that, as we do this work with each other in between these, really listening around invisibility and all of the components of it. And as a practitioner, I would say that it is high on the list of things I see Reiki healing. So the other thing that I would like to bring up about it for those of you doing self Reiki or giving Reiki to others, the nice thing with Reiki is that it does this automatically. So if this is something that is, really like rising to the top to empower you to become more visible to yourself, to hear yourself, that Robyn, in the invocation journey, the way it brought in our song and the song was so healing, because, and it's even something that, we work with all the time, but it felt like this next level of ability for that part to be present. And particularly when I become aware that it gets to be for me first, and then how I express that in the world is how I, my own choice. And then the last words that you said, because the whole time I was thinking sometimes being unheard, and that overcompensation that you said at the end of it, is that I might not be the person who is, or I would say I used to be the person in the room that was the loud talker. And I actually can look back at it and reflect on it, that I actually thought of it as almost a responsibility, like to fill the silence in the room, to be the one talking, to keep the conversation going. And so when I became a better listener and I let go of that kind of feeling of I need to fill the silence in the room, I can relate that all back to now, today. That's what showed up in the journey, was relating all of that back to being unheard and overcompensating. And so when you said that, I was like, yeah, that's a good word for it. So anyway, now what has happened through kind of studying this whole topic and for years thinking about those stuck words and seeing them in sessions, and unheard words or words said to you that get stuck. And sometimes in sessions, they've shown up as like these clumps of small metal letters just coming out. And what I love about Reiki and the way that it does the work is it does this for us. We may or may not know that it's happening the way like I'm describing, seeing it as these metal words going away, but we can feel that lifting. And that it helps us, the energy actually helps us sort through what needs to be let go of, and what actually still needs to be heard by us, and then deciding if we're going to say it or express it is, another topic. So anyway, the energy itself will do this with you. And part of what you do when you are in these Reiki experiences, or you're doing Reiki on the fly, or you do your own self Reiki or receive Reiki, is you're actually saying yes to it, and yes to its ability to lift things from you. And in this particular example, the unheard words, and it sorts through them and it does hear them for you, because Reiki, whatever is released, is healed. So what I've seen in sessions is how the unheard words go into the light and they're actually listened to. Your words are heard and then sorted through, because some just need to be healed, the power of them that they may have over you, released from you, some of them, or maybe even it's words you've said that you wish you hadn't said. So I'm going to add that into the mix. Maybe that's next week. I don't know, because it's like, oh yeah, that part. The
Big
words we
time.
wish. Yeah.
Big time.
Well, seriously, you guys, in my process of becoming more thoughtful about my words, there have been so many times that I will use the distance symbol and go back before what I said and shift the energy so it shifts. Even if I still said it, it just changes the energy of what I said that I wish I hadn't. But you can go back and heal some of those things too. But Reiki automatically does that. So anyway, just to summarize, the visibility, as we have been recognizing it, is such a big topic. There's so many pieces to it. And the biggest thing with Reiki is that even though you're in that maybe release process of some of these things, Reiki is always going to be empowering you. So it's filling up your voice for you so you can hear you. Then how you express it, probably again, that could be a whole topic of how to express, how you may want to share it with the outside world, and when and where, and like Robyn said, boundaries, and other things, not even boundaries. It doesn't have to be something, it could be something exuberant that you want to share. I mean, all of the different things. So anyway, I think I feel complete. Get ready for breakout rooms.
Yeah, Danny had a perspective really quick too.
Oh, great.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, I put in the chat the fear of missing out, that feeling, and it's kind of invisibility, right? It's like you see other people doing stuff, or doing classes, or moving on, or working out, or just feeling amazing, and or making plans, and you're not involved with it, and thinking, wow, what am I missing here? And it's really easy to feel invisible, I think. And I had a conversation about this. And then to ask, and I use Reiki for this, to ask, is that really true? I mean, really. And it tends to not be true. It tends to be just us getting in our mind and our thoughts. But when it all comes out, it's like, oh no, I just didn't think you'd want to go, or oh, it comes out to be so simple. But Reiki is such a grounding tool, and to kind of get those the mind chatter out a little bit, and to start fresh, and just to regroup and pause. And so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I there's just a couple comments in the chat that I wanted to also add to this conversation too. Is one of the other things that Reiki does help you do as well as you're in this process, like Colleen said, whether you're intentionally doing it or not, it's a part of the process with Reiki, because it just moves us into more wellness. Is that when you begin this process, and there's that healing that occurs around it, but then also that filling back up. And as Danny said, that kind of also brought this up, is feeling confident in ourself and feeling that kind of more settled feeling around our voice, around being heard, not being invisible. That this process that Reiki energy also assists us with, is that it does do that too over time. It's like, Colleen, as you said, that responsibility that you felt, or Danny, as you said, that kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out. And then over time, because of this work continually filling you, you do start to be like, okay, well, why do I need to do that? Why do I need to say, there's that process too. And sometimes you do need to be heard. So I'm not saying that it's just like, you're always going to let it, it's not a bypassing of that. But there is this level of confidence that continues in this journey, in this process, that does also change your perspective on this within ourselves. And that is a part of not feeling invisible to ourselves, right? Because when we are visible to ourselves, we're more in our security, we're more grounded in ourselves, and we have that kind of inherent confidence in ourselves. Yeah. All right.
Well, such a good topic.
It is. We could keep going.
I know. So
I do.
We have the Q&A tomorrow.
Yeah, that was just what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Colleen and I, with that ESP that we have with each other, starts to happen. Okay. So we do have our Q&A tomorrow. It's a podcast that is live. You don't have to be on video. You don't have to be on the recording. If you're listening to this later, it's once a month on Wednesdays. We have it on our Reiki lifestyle calendar, so you can go and check it out if you want to join the next one. You have to be on the podcast list to receive the link, but if you're already signed up, you don't need to do it twice. You'll receive the link in an email. It's the forum and the opportunity to come and ask any questions that you might have about Reiki. You can do it live, or we have options to like put it anonymously in the chat, and we explain all of that before the recording with it. So we'd love to have you join us. It's at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we send out the Zoom link usually tomorrow morning. So lots of fun conversations. If you have long form questions that you want to have asked and answered, then please come join us, and we talk about a lot of Reiki things. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We will see you next week.